You're listening to Digi City, a cyberpunk story in 8 parts, written by Jarrett Rush and produced by SciFi in cooperation with the author. Part 1. Miller climbed Tallboy's stairs, his arm pulled to his nose. He was doing what he could to shield himself from the stench that hung in the stairwells. Too many freaks using the first place they could find to relieve themselves. The smell was one of a million reasons Miller hated working hothouses, and was the exact reason he'd been cursing Cruz's name a dozen times a night for the last month. Miller stepped out onto the 10th floor, the area of Tallboy given to the older addicts. These were the guys who'd been on the wire for a long time. They weren't plugging in for thrills, they were plugging in to forget, soldiers who'd seen and done things that they couldn't let go of. These were the guys who Miller would be lying beside if he gave in to the draw of digital. Wires fell in bunches from the ceiling, bundles thick as tree trunks breaking up what was mostly open space. Guys were along the walls, most of them plugged in and passed out. Miller quickly studied faces as he passed. His port itched. Digital sunk its claws fast and deep, and Miller had taught himself to push the desire to plug in farther and farther down. So far down now that it was coming out of his toes, seeping out from under the nails and gathering in his shoes. The faces blended together. Miller stopped and closed his eyes. He pictured the face in the photo that Cruz had shown him. The high forehead, the short hair, the pronounced nose and deep-set eyes. Miller walked the walls again, and that's when he saw him. His guy was the loner, plugged in to a wire far from everyone else. He was laid out on the floor, his head resting on an outstretched arm, passed out, mouth fallen open. Miller went and sat beside him, leaning against the wall. He watched for a minute, then put a finger under the man's nose, just to check. Then he waited. He watched the junkies slowly wake, watched them try to stand, then stumble to unsteady feet like a calf, just from the womb. They'd grab for the wall, then fall to a knee. They'd try again and find their footing, then slowly shuffle from the room, likely collapsing somewhere in the stairwell on the way down. At some point, they'd wet themselves before mustering the energy and stability to make it to the bottom. It'd be hours before they'd be back to normal. Miller grabbed one of the loose wires that had spilled out of the bundle in front of him. He licked his thumb and ran it across the end. A jolt of digital danced up his arm. He flinched instinctively, then licked the palm of his hand. He rubbed the arm of the man next to him and left a smear of spit across his bicep. He grabbed a handful of wires from the floor and jammed them into the man's arm. His body tensed, and his eyes shot open. Miller smiled. "Wakey, wakey," he said. The man scrambled backward and up to his feet before taking a couple of clumsy steps and falling to the floor, his usual reflexes and coordination covered in a thick and heavy blanket of digital. Miller got up and offered the man a hand. He swatted it weakly away. "Come on," Miller said. "Just take it. I'm only offering to help you to your feet." The man tried to form words, but nothing came. Miller pulled the man's hands behind his back. He held the guy's wrists together and then secured them with a zip tie he'd kept in his back pocket. They took slow steps toward the stairs and the exit. "I didn't think you guys existed anymore." It wasn't loud, but it was intelligible. "Didn't think we existed?" Miller asked. "Who do you think I am?" The man shuffled his feet through the door to the stairs, then stopped and leaned against the wall for a moment. Miller let him pause. "You're a cop, right?" Miller shook his head. "Not a cop," he said. "Roma." Miller gave the guy a nudge to get him moving toward the stairs. He took heavy, conscious steps down. "What's Roma want with me?" "Don't know," Miller said. "Don't care. They have a list with runners' names on it. I've been working my way down, picking everyone up on your crew. Today was your turn." They were on the 8th floor. The man kept one shoulder firmly planted against the wall. "My crew? I'm not a runner." "Not what my list says." The man stumbled a couple of steps. Miller pulled tight on the plastic tie around the man's wrist and kept him from going end over end down the stairs. "Who gave you the list?" "My boss." "Well, wherever he got my name, he's wrong. You'll be able to tell him that in a few minutes." Their pace down the steps slowed. and Miller gave the man a push to keep him moving. He resisted. Miller pushed again, and the guy pushed back. "Give me a second," he said. "You've got me tied up. I'm not going anywhere. I just need a moment." Miller waited for the man to finish,